For the first time since January 2017, Donald Trump is finally popular, or at least on the very cusp of it. According to 538's average of polls tracking Trump's favorability rating, 47.9% of American adults now have an unfavorable view of the president-elect, compared to 46.7% with a favorable view. That gives him a net favorability rating, the difference between these two numbers, of negative 1.2 points. This is the highest it's been since 538 began tracking the data in late January 2021. It's also higher than Trump's average net approval rating at any point during his presidency after January 2017. In other words, Trump is at or near an all-time high in popularity. Since Election Day, he has gained roughly 8 percentage points in net favorability. At that time, his net favorability stood at negative 8.6 points, about where it had been for most of last year. In this era of highly polarized and remarkably stable public opinion, an 8-point bounce is more than noteworthy. In fact, Trump's post-November surge is rivaled only by the bump in Vice President Kamala Harris's favorability after President Joe Biden dropped out of the 2024 election, and she became the presumptive Democratic nominee. So, what explains the rise in Trump's ratings? The simplest answer is that some of Trump's critics have genuinely softened their stance on him. Notably, Trump hasn't improved his standing among just one segment of the electorate. According to a comparison of YouGov, The Economist, polling from before and after the election, the share of Americans rating Trump favorably has increased across every gender, race, and age group, except for people age 65 plus, where his favorability declined by just 1 point, from 49% to 48%. This slight drop could easily be chalked up to random noise in the polling. Interestingly, even Democrats now rate Trump more favorably than they did before the election. Now, why the uniform shift? One explanation could be the contrast with Biden, who currently has a nearly 20-point net negative favorability rating in 538's average and will exit the White House as one of the most unpopular presidents in American history. Another factor could be the campaign itself, which may have reminded voters of the pre-pandemic period of Trump's presidency when the economy was generally strong and inflation was stable. For those who weren't avid news followers, and most Americans aren't, it was relatively easy to overlook some of the more unpopular aspects of his presidency. And yet, even for Americans who paid closer attention to the controversies of Trump's presidency, it's possible that the economic narrative resonates more in hindsight, particularly given the current challenges under Biden's administration. A key takeaway from polling throughout the 2024 cycle was that voters increasingly viewed Trump's presidency in a more favorable light when compared to the perceived turmoil of Biden's job performance. Even if this is true, it's worth questioning whether this represents a permanent shift or just a temporary sugar high. It's easy, frankly, to see why the average American might approve of a president more after a big win, especially when most of the negative aspects of his presidency feel like they're in the rearview mirror, at least for now. A post-election honeymoon period is common for newly elected presidents, including Trump after his 2016 win. In the 2 months following the 2016 election, Trump's net favorability rating jumped 17 points, rising from negative 21 points to negative 4 points, only to slide back into negative double digits by May, according to an average of polls compiled by Real Clear Politics. In this context, Trump's current 8-point boost over the last 2 months actually feels underwhelming. Even Joe Biden enjoyed a 7-point bounce after his victory in 2020, again based on Real Clear Politics averages. With that being said, recent history suggests Trump's approval numbers will likely peak sometime soon after the inauguration, before dipping back down a few points and then plateauing within a certain range. Where that range ends up could prove consequential. For example, Biden's approval consistently hovered in the low 40s throughout most of his term leading up to the 2024 campaign cycle, before dipping slightly to around 37 to 39%. Notably, Biden's approval last peaked right around the 2022 midterms, sitting at about 42% in October and November of that year. That bump coincided with a better-than-expected midterm performance for the Democratic Party. Similarly, how far Trump's numbers regress over the next 2 years could significantly impact how many seats Republicans manage to hold in Congress during the 2026 midterms. That just about does it for today's video. As always, feel free to share your thoughts on this map in the comments and suggest any other videos or topics you'd like me to cover. Shout out to my channel members listed in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Check out more of my content here, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.